to Overtime Hockey Talk. My name is Mark Paul. My co-host Justin Baker and I continuing our series on team windows of opportunity. And if you haven't listened to 31 through 18, there's two separate episodes for each half of those. So you can go back and listen to those. And we are on team number 17. We're starting to get into those teams that maybe they're playoff contenders and they're headed towards becoming Stanley Cup contenders. Perhaps they've been Stanley Cup contenders before and they are falling rapidly from the list. But Justin's the man with the list. I'm the one with the categories. And so, again, time to rip you to shreds.
Yeah, tearing me down. That's all I do with my life is I build up walls and people tear them down.
Wow. That's so sad.
All right. Well, let's go with 17 then. I've got the New York Islanders in at 17. And a lot of you might be saying, why? I mean, they've got Matthew Barzal in there, but my biggest concern with them and basically is I think their window to win is very short, given that they do have a lot of older guys like Anders Lee, Brock Nelson, Jordan Eberle, who are all 28, 29 years old and signed to longer deals. And so to me, their window to win is very small. It's more now. And, you know, don't get me wrong, Matthew Barzal is going to be there for a while, I think, and he'll probably sign a very long-term deal, I would hope, or maybe he'll be one of those guys that signs the 4 or 5 year deal and tries to get into free agency quicker. But regardless, they've got a lot of, older guys on the back end signed to a few more years and older guys up front signed to, a few years after that. So I think, they've got to win now and their window is going to close very quick.
Yeah, I mean, they're as far as this season and last season goes, they've looked pretty good post John Tavares. Definitely, I mean, sitting right now in the third spot in the Metro, but I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility to think that they are a playoff team. There's no doubt, and it's just a matter of they could win a round certainly, but do we think they can ultimately go in and beat a team like? First off, can they beat Pittsburgh twice?
Absolutely not.
Second, can they beat Washington? Could they beat Boston or Tampa?
This is a scoring league.
To play.
Yeah, this is a scoring league, and I don't think they have enough up front to score. We saw it last year against Carolina, and frankly, that's my biggest concern because if they want to, quote unquote, retool on the fly, they've got a lot of guys that don't score signed to long-term deals, and that's going to hamper their ability to, maybe retool, rebuild, whatever it is they decide to do around Matthew Barzal. They've got to basically go with what they've got and hope to maybe shred a little bit of salary down the road or something because it's, they're stuck basically where they are right now.
Yeah, I mean, Anders Lee isn't going to all of a sudden rip off 40 or anything,
right.
They are what they are. Anders Lee is a 25 to 30 goal scorer, which is nice, but then really you start to fall off pretty quick after that. And I mean, yeah, the Islanders, I don't mind the Islanders being here. I have them as on the cusp of a Stanley Cup contender.
Okay.
But agree with the short window. Like, there's really not a whole lot coming. I mean, there's Oliver Wahlstrom and, they have some okay guys down in the minors.
Minors, yeah.
Wow. But it's not like you're looking and going, oh yeah, okay, we've got a top 10 pick coming. We have, something special coming. I mean, that's Barzal.
That's Barzal.
So now it's going to be a matter of can you attract free agents to the island again?
Yeah.
And the fact that they're going to have a brand new arena is certainly going to help them. So I'll say that I'm optimistic that they can keep what they have going here, especially with Barry Trotz. I think that he's won a Stanley Cup now very recently. He's still probably the most underrated coach in the NHL.
I agree with that. Absolutely.
Remember how bad the Islanders were?
Yeah. They
worst
were
defensive team
Yep.
of this century.
Went from last to
into
first.
the best.
Yeah. I don't know how that happens except for the coaching. The system's in place. And, they got to figure out what they're going to do with Andrew Ladd. Maybe the new CBA, they get a couple buyouts, and then they can dump a couple of these large salaries that are signed for a few years, and then they can attract some bigger scoring free agents to really put them over the top, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, who's your number 16?
16
We're
for
into
me.
the playoff teams.
We're into the playoffs, yes. A team to me that could be a playoff team this year and I'm hoping will be a playoff team this year, and that's the Arizona Coyotes.
Okay.
Yeah, I love this team. I love the way they're built. Love the systems they have in place. They have probably, I would say, maybe third or fourth best goalie pair in the league right now with Ranta and Darcy Kemper.
Yeah,
fantastic, and they've got great guys on the back end, all signed, to really, I don't want to say team friendly deals, but they don't have anybody back there outside of OEL that's got a huge contract that you're looking at and like shaking your head like this is going to hurt us.
Well, an OEL's contract is very reasonable.
Yeah, absolutely. For a number one, like
take OEL. I think OEL could probably get 10 on the open market.
Okay, yeah. And then you look at their forward group, right? I mean, Phil Kessel, he's got a couple more years, but he's a reasonable 6.8, so that gives them flexibility, and he's their highest paid forward. So everybody underneath them isn't making a ton of money yet. Now, next year, Clayton Keller, he's going to get a raise. He'll be $7 million and be the highest paid guy. But, outside of him.
Forward, yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah, highest paid forward. But outside of him, there's really, no contracts on here where I look at it and I just really cringe and just say, ooh, God, that's ugly. Maybe Christian Dvorak, you could shake your head at a little bit. But again, it's $4.4 million, so it's not atrocious,
Sure. The other side of it is next year, they have $1.5 million in cap space.
Yeah, and that's with contracts they have. They're going to be paying both their goalies $4 million.
And Taylor Hall is not signed.
Right.
So, Taylor Hall's gone. That to me, they actually adding Taylor Hall, did they put themselves into the Stanley Cup contender list and we just don't know it yet?
Yeah, I don't. That's questionable. I know they
just for this year they happen to like move themselves into that window, or are they still like? Is Taylor Hall the kind of guy who? Granted, he has won one playoff game in his entire career. I think they won one, right? They beat Tampa Bay in one game. Maybe they won two.
No,
I think it was
just the one.
5. Yeah, 5 games. That was 3 years ago. He's never really had the opportunity to prove himself in the playoffs, but I don't know. Does Taylor Hall give you enough to be able to go into the playoffs and be able to score goals? I think they have the same issue as the Islanders. It's just that, are they going to be able to score goals come playoff time? Sure. It's great. You have 2 goalies in the regular season, but you only get to play one of them in the playoffs.
True. Yeah, absolutely.
Once you're in the playoffs, your backup goalie means next to nothing barring injury.
Well, yeah, and the fact is you never play your backup goalie until you're pretty much out of it anyways. So again, barring injury,
sure.
they're worthless, right?
Yeah.
So You got $4 million of money just dying. But again, there's a lot of young pieces on this team, which is why I have them, up at 16, because I believe, in the next few years they can, quietly retool, replace players, guys like, Derek Stepan, Michael Grabner. They've both got 2 years left. So you can quietly fill in those spaces with, maybe some younger prospects, or even go out and then have the money to sign some free agents that can fill in maybe your gaps where you're, missing guys. So the only big concern for this team for me is obviously the number one center spot, but I think they play a system that's so good right now that, they can afford to get by on what they have right now at center. Just try to figure out how to score a couple more goals, and then you're Stanley Cup contender.
To me, I see it like you've got Goligoski, Hjalmarsson, and Demers combined make $14 million about.
Yeah, roughly. Yeah.
So there's your that's your problem. Actually, they make almost $15 million. So you've got these 3 veteran defensemen, and I don't know if all of them will be able to be there next year. Like, this team really is built for, hey, let's see what we can do this year.
Right.
And it'll be interesting to see, like, this second half of the year. We'll call it second half just because it's the end of the All-Star break. But Phil Kessel's got 11 goals.
Yeah, that's kind of shocking to me.
He has the last time he scored, barring the lockout year, the last time he scored what he's on pace for about 20 goals. And the last time he scored this few of goals was 2007, 2008, his second year in the league with the Bruins, when he had 19 goals.
Wow.
Playing on the fourth line for a fourth line.
Oh, boy.
That's I'd say that is something else to be concerned about as well, as you've got $6.8 million in a guy who is there to purely score goals, and he's not doing it. System, maybe. It might be the system, but I also think it may be the players around him. He's never been great when he's the only guy.
That's true. And the nice thing is, too, I mean, again, at $6.8 million and a guy who has proven he can put up 30-plus goals, you can move him if you need to, right? Open up that cap space and then hopefully get, a decent return or, maybe have your eye on a free agent and so you can move that money out to a team that...
I don't know if you can, though.
Yeah, I think
Who wants
you could.
Kessel at $6.8 million if he's not scoring more than 20 goals?
Yeah, but I don't. Again, I think that has to do with maybe the system, right? You look at it and you say, okay, Pittsburgh, he was doing well. Boston, he pretty much was doing good. So you could move him into a team that could say, okay, he's only got 2 years left after this season, so it wouldn't be too difficult to eat that if you had to.
Just think if Marian Hossa comes back, plays for the Coyotes.
Oh,
along with Chris Pronger and Pavel Datsyuk.
Oh goodness!
They actually have their 3 best players to ever be a part of the organization. Never played a single game for them. They're 3 Hall of Famers.
They're 3 Hall of Famers outside of Shane Doan, right? Yeah.
Shane Doan is not going to go in the Hall of Fame.
You don't think so?
No.
I'm
only reason he
50-50,
would is
but...
because he was they could be like, he's the first ever Arizona Coyote to go in the Hall of Fame. That's the only reason. If he played for the Red Wings, no way.
Oh, well, I agree. Yeah.
No way.
It'll be interesting.
Let's go 15.
Yeah, 15. I've got the Dallas Stars coming in at 15. Another hopefully playoff-bound team. They're sitting third in the Central right now. I really love, again, this is a team like Arizona that doesn't score a ton, but plays very good defensively and has a good goaltending tandem to do so. Now, again, you look at their forward group, I think they're more or less closer to win now than maybe Arizona was because, Jamie Benn, for example, 30 years old, signed for 5 more seasons after this. You've got Pavelski, who's 35, Radulov, 33. So you've got a lot of older forwards up front, but then you look on the back end, right? You've got just probably one of the best group of young defensemen in the whole entire game between Klingberg, Esselin, Dell, Heiskanen. I mean, these guys are phenomenal and all very young in age and coming right into their prime as defensemen. And then, of course, you look a little bit further behind them, and you've got Ben Bishop in goal, who is phenomenal and probably the most underpaid goalie in the NHL, getting paid under $5 million to do what he does. And to win
Vezina trophies.
Yeah.
And he's going to be signed for the next 3 years after this one as well. So
super cheap. Khudobin, I wouldn't surprise me if he re-signs, but I mean, he's 33, so he's still got a little hockey life left in him. I got to think that
he's looking to maybe try and get some starter money. Like starter money is in like 4.5. I mean,
I don't know.
Anton Khudobin's probably worth it at this point. Like you look at the way that he's played for the Stars the last 2 years and Boston the year before that, before he signed there. I think he's
in
a position to probably command some money.
He's going to be another goaltender like I think that goes to possibly Carolina or Chicago where you're looking to do a 50-50 split right in goal.
The same team's just always looking for these goalies.
Always. So who knows if that's going to happen. Yeah, but like I said, this team's got an opportunity to win now. I think they've got, the players to do so. The only problem is, like Arizona, scoring goals. Maybe they make a move at a deadline, acquiring another, top 9 forward, somebody who can add a little bit of depth on their third line. But, right now, if they get into the playoffs, I don't know if I'd bet against them unless maybe they're playing, Colorado in the West. I think any other team they would have an opportunity to beat.
I mean, they took the Stanley Cup champions to Game 7 overtime. Right. Like that was truly a next shot wins.
Yeah, they played hard, and I loved watching the other night against who was it? But Jamie Benn scoring 2. Oh, Tampa Bay. Jamie Benn scoring 2 goals, and man, that overtime goal where he just stole it and he willed his way to that front of that net to put it in past Vasilevsky was just phenomenal.
Yeah, by far the best defense in the league, too.
Yeah, so he's looking good. So
in terms of their window, I have them as Stanley Cup contenders.
Okay.
I think last year proved it. I think that they had underachieved in years prior where they actually missed the playoffs, and I think that they were purely they were almost a virtual lock for the playoffs, and they just kept missing for one reason or another. They're finally putting everything together, and bringing in Pavelski, making these moves, I think makes them a Stanley Cup contender for the next 3 years.
Okay.
I look, though, at that 3-year mark at the end of that spot, And you got to think Jamie Benn will be in full decline mode.
Right. He plays hard and he's not getting any faster.
Yeah. So. That deal looking worse and worse every moment. He should still be able to, score about 25 goals. Right now he's got 14. Only 25 points, though, in 49 games. So he's really on pace for like 40 points, maybe 45 points. So that would be his worst total of his career since his rookie season.
Wow.
Yeah. Rookie season, he had 41 points in 82 games. So that is not a good sign for the Stars. But I think that given the rest of this lineup, like Tyler Seguin still just in his prime, ready to roll. And Joe Pavelski plays a brand of hockey where he doesn't need to be the fastest guy out there. He's a good skater, but he's great hands, and that's not going away. Same with Radulov, great hands. So they have these guys who they can plug in and up and down the lineup. And then you've got a guy like Roop Hintz who he'll need to be re-signed. And he don't underestimate the fact that they're going to have to pay some of these guys, and they are going to lose some players off their books as well. So to have to replace them with full-time, fully paid players like Heiskanen in 2 years, he might be the highest paid player in this whole team.
So, yeah, that's possible. I mean, he'll definitely be the highest paid defenseman, that's for sure.
Yeah. So I mean, you're looking in maybe even 2 years that their window may be closing because these players are getting paid more, and at the same time, some other players are dropping off who are making so much money that it's going to make it hard for them to sign their middle of the road guys, and so those guys are going to leave. Their depth is going to be hurt, and they'll probably slip back into what will be a playoff contender. And they, of course, will have the opportunity to move back into that Stanley Cup contender space because they have Miro Heiskanen and John Klingberg and Tyler Seguin for the next 6 or 7 years. So
yeah.
Okay, that was 15.
That was 15. So 14.
14.
Yeah, a team for me that has been underachieving the last few years, and I say that because I've always expected more out of them, but just haven't gotten it. And, that's the definition of underachieving, but that's the Florida Panthers for me.
Okay, so you have the Florida Panthers ahead of the Dallas Stars.
I do, because I like what I really like about Florida, and I think their window to win is a little bit larger than Dallas's, is because
but they've never made the playoffs.
Well, they haven't in a while.
6 years.
They haven't in a while.
The last time they made the playoffs was the year of the lockout.
Yeah, maybe
it was the year after that.
The year that New Jersey went, I think, was the year that they went.
Yeah. Okay. Then it was.
But again, their forwards are really, really young. Right? They've got a lot of young guys that are very, very talented. I mean, we talk every single year about Barkov being the most underrated guy in the game. And I mean, he's only 24 freaking years old. Only 24. Granted, his contract runs up in 3 years, but I think, they'll get him signed. They'll re-sign him. I mean, they've got the luxury of having no state tax.
Well, and Florida is they're never hurting for guys who want to come play them.
Right. Why wouldn't you want to go to Miami?
Especially if they're good. Like,
exactly.
If they're good and it's a good location to go to, cool. Like, Tampa Bay is definitely taking advantage of that.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, they've got a good back end. They've got Keith Yandel, who still looks ageless back there. Aaron Ekblad's been just fine to me.
Aaron Ekblad has looked great this year. It's probably the best he's looked since his rookie season.
Yeah, and he's finally earning that $7.5 million. But, Huberdeau looks like he's going to eclipse 100 points this season. He looks phenomenal.
It's crazy.
I mean, he might be a little bit more underrated at this point
Probably,
than Barkov.
He's definitely the most underpaid player.
Oh,
him and Barkov. It's crazy. Like, Barkov and Huberdeau combined make less than... they basically make the same as Austin Matthews.
Right. Yeah.
Combined.
Wouldn't you? I mean, come on.
11.8 is what they make combined. I think Matthews makes 11.5.
Yeah. Why wouldn't you rather have those two guys? But again, the state tax thing doesn't hurt much. But again, the reason I have them at 15, and again, they haven't made the playoffs, is they've now got a coach that I think can put them over the hump. They've got a goaltender while Bobrovsky has struggled mightily. I mean, I think he's sitting at like an .899 save percentage right now. I think they'll figure it out, right? I think because he's signed long term, that might hamper them, maybe 4 years from now when they have to start re-signing guys like Barkov and Huberdeau to new deals. And Trocheck will need a new deal in a couple seasons too. But, I think until then, they've still got a 3-4 year window where they can be very competitive and still have salary cap money to go out and get some pieces and make some moves.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to Bobrovsky, I'm looking and I'm going, okay, you're going to figure this out. Like, you're not this bad.
Right.
Maybe you aren't like 925 save percentage good anymore, but you're definitely better than what you've been showing.
Right.
I would expect a bounce back year next year, and maybe even into the playoffs. He kind of figures it out. He has had sort of a rough last couple years. I would say personally, like the last year with the Blue Jackets, there was a lot of turmoil. You come to Florida, it's a new team, it's a new system. He's never played anywhere else in North America, so I'm willing to give him a pass for this year. But that $10 million is going to start looking real bad soon if he can't figure this out. So
yeah, that might be one of those potential buyouts in the CBA if we ever talk about that again. But
I totally forgot that he played for Philadelphia.
Yeah, for a quick second.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then for Florida too. I mean, future wise, you look at it, they've got good talent. They've got guys like Owen Tippett down there who look like they could potentially be
Henrik
top six guys.
And Alexei Heponiemi.
Yeah, they have all their draft picks, they're at least for the first 4 rounds for the next few years. So they've got the ability to add to that talent pool. So, again, I think the window for this team is, at least 3 to 4 years, and then we'll see where they go after that. But hopefully they get guys like Barkov and Huberdeau signed past that, and then they can keep competing.
Okay, so now I would have Dallas significantly further ahead than Florida.
Significantly.
Like on my list in terms of Stanley Cup contenders, I have 9 teams that I consider to be contenders. 9 teams that I think could win the cup.
Now, wow, I don't disagree with you.
I could break that list down further, to like, all right, here's the 4 teams that will, like 75% chance will win the cup. But when I look at Florida, I see a team that has not made the playoffs, looks like they're going to make the playoffs this year. Definitely not even a sure thing, because you still, you have
Toronto on their heels.
Toronto's on their heels,
yeah.
and then that drops them. Like, they're at this point, they won't even be a wild card team. So it's either come in third in your division or you miss the playoffs.
Right.
So they're going to be fighting the Leafs the rest of the year. So to me, that there's no guarantee there. Either that or you're fighting Carolina and Columbus for a wild card spot.
Which is realistic, because I maybe think Columbus might fall out. But
yeah,
But again, I think Dallas's window.
They can't lose right now.
Why I have the only reason I have Florida ahead of them is because Dallas's window to me is smaller, while they're a more likely contender for a cup than I think Florida is.
So their window's actually open, though.
Their window's open.
Florida's window is not open.
I think it's open.
Florida is not going to win the Stanley Cup.
I think it's cracked open.
You think they're Stanley Cup contenders right now?
I don't think they're contenders, but I think once you get in, anything can happen, especially when you have Q behind the bench.
I just don't think they're not Stanley Cup contenders, so their window is still their playoff windows hasn't even is open.
Okay,
but they haven't made the playoffs yet. Let's get in the playoffs, and then they can win the. They're probably not going to make the playoffs and then win the cup.
Well, and then
any team could do it, but you
right.
look at look at what St. Louis had to go through to win the cup.
I know.
St. Louis had so many playoff disappointments before they won the cup. Washington, tons of playoff disappointments before they won the cup. San Jose they made the finals finally, but so many disappointments before they won the cup. Pittsburgh, probably the only team that went from no playoffs to Stanley Cup final. They lose and they go and then they win.
Sure.
And I'm not going to say that Florida is too far off in terms of high end talent, but they still don't have Crosby and Malkin.
Yeah, and then my other reasoning is too, and this is a big part of my list, was how close are you to having to do a full rebuild again? And I think Dallas is closer to having to kickstart the rebuild than Florida is.
Okay. Yeah.
So, yeah. All right. Well, moving on. Number 13.
13.
Yeah, I have the Calgary Flames at 13.
Okay.
A team that, again, has potential to be in the playoffs, compete, and could be dangerous because, let's face it, that's a weak Pacific Division. So once you get in, you could have a fairly easy road to get towards the conference finals, which would be, super nice for anybody in the Pacific. But they've got, young forwards. They've got good young forwards. They've got leadership on the back end. Now, Noah Hannafin looks, pretty dang good. They're probably going to lose TJ Brody. I'm hearing he's, they're looking at possibly moving him because they would like to keep Travis Hamonic. Don't really blame them there, I guess, if you're choosing between the two. But
sure. It's funny because when Travis Hamonic first signed there, he was an absolute train wreck.
Right.
And now they want to keep him.
Yeah, but the biggest concern for me is on the back and behind the defense, and that's in goal. Never been a huge believer in Dave Riddick. He looks fine, but he's not going to go and steal a Stanley Cup series for me. So,
Hey, neither did Michael Layton.
Well,
he did that.
That's true. The third stringer from Philly came in.
He's average, right?
Yeah, he is average.
He's playing average hockey, 913 save percentage. He's average.
Yeah, and you know what?
Maybe a hint above average.
Sure, and they've got $16 million in cap space to work with next season. Granted, a big chunk of that I think is going to go into maybe re-signing Travis Hamonic.
How much do you think Hamonic gets on the?
Maybe $4 or $5 million.
Yeah, so
I think.
I mean, he's at 4, so or he's at almost 4 right now.
Yeah, you give him a little bump, but again, I think they could go out next season and spend a little bit of that money on, say, you could Robin Lehner or even Braden Holtby. You go convince him to come in at $7-8 million a season. Boom! Now to me, you're very much a Stanley Cup contender because you got a guy who's won it and could snag you a Vezina at the same time.
All right, yeah,
So,
I will say there are a few teams that are more in a better position in terms of their top 6 forwards. When you go, Tkachuk, Goudreau, Monahan all signed for minimum next 3 years, if not 4. Backlund signed for the next 5. Lindholm signed for the next 5, all at very reasonable rates. And then when it comes to the depth at the forward position, they have plenty of it. They're doing well there, and that was really a big knock on the Flames 2-3 years ago was they didn't have that depth at forward. Their only logjam in the cap world is Milan Lucic, but
right.
I think that it was Lucic or James Neal. They decided that they needed Lucic more than they needed Neal. Ultimately, what can you do? You can bury him in the minors. You can save basically $1 million on that, and you can just have him go down, or you just play him and hope he gets hurt. I guess go on long-term IR. How much longer can he play the way that he wants to play before he either gets suspended for like a year or he just kind of his body wears out. So we'll see there, but This team, I will agree, this team is in a good spot. I don't think they're Stanley Cup contenders, but I think they're a player away. So you put in a goalie in there. Although statistically speaking, I don't know if Riddick has been that much better than Holtby.
Oh, statistically, Riddick's been better than Holtby. Holtby has not had I think he's like at 909 or something like that. So not that big of an improvement. But again, maybe you get a team that,
But again, systems and...
Yeah, because they're going to be looking, at a new head coach possibly next year.
It also hasn't mattered because Washington wins every game.
I know. They'll outscore you 7-6.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, let's go to 12.
12 for me is the Vegas Golden Knights. And I heard they're also looking at buying an AHL team, and they're going to call them the Silver Knights, by the way. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Oh, that's...
clever.
That would be... the Silver Knights.
Right. Ridiculous.
You came in second place. You're almost golden.
So at 12 for me is the Vegas Golden Knights. We know the book on these guys. First season Stanley Cup. Last year, was a different story. But now they've got a new coach they've got to throw in there, see how that works out. Pete DeBoers, we'll see if he can... maybe right the ship. I didn't really think anything was wrong with Gerard Gallant personally.
But they've only just gone and basically stunk up the joint since he got fired.
Right.
I don't know what was going on there. I'm still waiting. Usually you wait this long, something's come out like, oh, he did something stupid.
Personally, I think it's just ownership. If he had come out the first year and only won 20 games, they would have let him get 3-4 more years at this. Right. But because he went Stanley Cup first year, they're like, okay, you got to do that every year now. Oh, you're not? Okay, bye. So ownership, I think, just wants wait. It's Vegas. the city itself, I think they want a winner now.
It's unfortunate because, yes, they're 3 points into the playoffs. They are also in the Pacific Division. So, they win one game and they go from the last wild card to the second spot in the Pacific.
Yeah. So for me, this team, I think, they're not ready. They're, far away from a rebuild, but I think their window is getting smaller because to me, their window is only as large as Marc-Andre Fleury is playing well, right? So he signed for 2 more seasons after this. So after that, I don't know where they'll go.
Well,
right?
They just have never really had to look for a starting goalie because they got him right off the bat. So, I don't think that Vegas is going to have trouble attracting a goaltender to come and play there. So I got to imagine that whenever Fleury runs his course, that they'll be able to find somebody else. I actually have this team as they're probably my 8-9 in terms of a Stanley Cup contender. I'm still willing to put them into that because they did go to the Stanley Cup Finals 2 years ago. They should have at least advanced after that first round against the Sharks, where they got completely screwed and literally a rule change because of what happened to them.
Thanks, Thomas Schertl.
I like the way that this team is constructed. Just don't really like their defense all that much. But they don't have a whole lot of money put into the defense. Between you've got Nate Schmidt, Shea Theodore, Braden McNabb, and Nick Holden, and that's $15 million. A little bit more than $15 million. I guess $16 million. So for that to be your top 4, they definitely have some room to maneuver in there with Holden, Merrill, and Engelin, all free agents at the end of the year, along with some different kind of depth guys. Probably the most significant free agent they have, Cody Eakin, and Ryan Reeves, which you're not re-signing Ryan Reeves. They have some space next year, 15, probably more than that to go and sign, and they don't have anyone significant to sign. I got to imagine they're going to bring in someone.
Yeah,
I got to imagine they're looking for a defenseman, and I think that
maybe an Alex Pietrangelo comes in, a resume as a Stanley Cup winner.
Can you imagine that if he went to Vegas?
That would change the face of that franchise for sure.
I don't see Pietrangelo leaving St. Louis, but that would be.
Well, let's be honest. I think St. Louis is tied up against the cap next season, and it's going to be very difficult.
Only got $7 million right now,
and he's going to want $7 million at least next season.
Yeah, he's going to want probably closer to 10.
Oh, absolutely.
That's my guess. So 7, and then maybe the cap goes up, say $2.5 million. So that's basically it. You can't re-sign anyone else if you're St. Louis. But anyways, the Vegas Golden Knights. I like the way they're constructed. I think that it's unfortunate that Pacioretty has had these moments where you're like, we're getting the real Pacioretty, and then he slips back into insignificance. And then, Paul Stastny has a few good games. It's almost like with this iteration of the Golden Knights, with Mark Stone for a first full year, Mark Stone hasn't been, hasn't been as good as we hoped that he would be. I know he has 46 points in 52 games. He's been good, but he hasn't been great for this team yet. Only has 18 goals. I think the expectation is that he gets 35, 40 even.
Wow.
Playing with the high-end talent that he's playing with. And so I think that he needs to be better along with some other guys, but I think the future is still bright. You're not gonna write off a team because they have a bad 50 games.
Sure. Yeah.
And not even that bad. They're 2 points. They're actually 1 point out of home ice advantage in the playoffs. So things are okay. They just need to.
Still my pick to win the Pacific, so they better prove me right.
I am still very surprised that Vancouver is on top. It's been phenomenal to watch.
Yeah, 5 teams all within 3 points. That's crazy in the Pacific. Yep. Nobody wants it.
Okay, let's move into number 11.
Number 11 for me is a team that is in full-on win-now mode. They probably are at the top, or I would say one of the top teams of your Stanley Cup contenders list, and that's the Boston Bruins, right?
Okay.
And I have them this low because their window, to me, is very tiny. They have a lot of aging guys. Their core, their group of guys, Zdeno Chara, Patrice Bergeron, Brad Marchand. These guys are all very old in terms of...
Brad Marchand's 31. He's not very old.
I know, but to me, the way he plays the game, he plays hard and he goes hard every single night. Now, I think he'll still be a very good player towards the back end of his contract, but he's going to slow down. He's a small guy, and you play that hard, that's small. I think eventually that's going to start to have its toll on you. And then when you lose, Patisse Bergeron here, if his production starts slipping even the slightest, where's that going to lead you? Is Pastrnak going to continue to drive that line? Maybe. I still think he's very underrated. One of the better. I mean, he's leading the NHL in goals right now, so no shocker there. But on the back end, Charlie McAvoy is going to be fine.
Well, it's can they re-sign Torrey Krug?
Right, exactly. And they don't have guys outside of McAvoy.
If they don't, then they're in big trouble.
Yeah, they don't have guys outside of McAvoy signed long term on the back end. I mean, John Moore, okay, yeah, he's got a couple, a few years after this year, but big whoop, he's a number 5 defenseman, if that. And so you look at the goaltending situation. Tuukka, I worry about his health a little bit. He got another concussion, so he's out.
Right.
Halak, he's a free agent after this year. Are you going to be able to re-sign him? Because he's going to want more money. Because he's looked phenomenal playing backup in Boston.
Yeah, he has,
and he was great in the island
as well.
Yeah,
yeah. Boston, I would agree with that. Their window's open for sure. They could win the cup this year, but who knows?
It's a very small window.
Who knows where this team is in a year or two? I still I wouldn't be willing to even if they lost Torrey Krug. I think that they're still probably Stanley Cup contenders next year. But yeah, then once you have a 33-year-old Marchand, a 36-year-old Bergeron, a 35-year-old Krejci. Well, Krejci would be a free agent at the end of 2 years.
Yeah, and they're not re-signing him either. I don't think, but unless they get a very team-friendly deal. But
yeah, and then you've got David Backes, who's buried in the minors right now with his $6 million contract. So. But they do have quite a bit of cap space. They've managed things well. They don't have a ton of money towards their defense, so they can afford Torrey Krug. My guess is that he's going to want John Carlson type of money, $8 million. So it'll be interesting. But I do have them as a Stanley Cup contender. I said 1 to 2 more years to contend for the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, that's fair. That's exactly where I would.
I've also been saying that for the last 6 or 7 years. 1 to 2 years left. Because it used to be, well, as long as Chara is good, then the Bruins will be contenders. But then when it was like, oh, Chara's slipping, and the Bruins missed the playoffs one time, and then they just went ham after that.
And Chara just seems to find a new life. I don't understand what he did, but
he became a vegan.
I guess. Well,
all right. Well, we'll end the show headed into the top 10.
Exciting.
Join us for our next episode as we continue the top 10 team windows of opportunity. You can find us on Twitter at OT Hockey Talk, and we'll talk to you guys very, very soon. Enjoy your week.